Okay. So, okay, it's 10. So, hello, everybody. Hello, all the guests, and especially for the two special speakers today. I am Justin, and I will be have Professor Petra to moderate the webinar today. So, first of all, before we start, let's give me records the seminars today so that we can provide you the seminar video to via your email later. So, welcome everybody on our seminar Contemporary Research in Business and Finance in spring 2023. It is the second seminar, and it's in the chapter of series seminar on business and finance, which is co-organized by YZU University and a partner university. And today, our partner university is the Banking Academy Vietnam. And let me introduce about two presenters today. The first presenter is the Associate Professor Nguyen Trinh Tran. She comes from discipline of finance at YZU University. She got the PhD degree in finance from National Taiwan University. During her PhD, she also visited National Singapore University. Her research has been published at the Journal of Econometrics, Pacific Basin Finance Journal, Advance in Financial Planning and Forecasting, and Review of Security and Future Markets. And the second presenter, I would like to introduce Ms. Trương Hoàng Diệp Hướng. She is the PhD candidate. She the researcher at the Banking Academy of Vietnam. She also got the master degree of finance management at Northumbria University in 2014. And she brought around 26 papers published in Vietnam and around the world. And today, they will go to our seminar to present their own paper. First, we have Dr. Nguyen Trinh Tran with the paper, What Share of Patents is Commercialized? And then we will have the Ms. Hướng with the paper, The Effect of Economic Complexity and Energy Security on Energy Efficiency. By the end, we will have the Q&A section and discussion. So each presenter will have around 20 minutes to present the paper. And I will notify you when you have 5 minutes left and 1 minute left. So I don't want to waste your time anymore. So we will start with the first paper by Dr. Nguyen Trinh Tran.
Okay. Can you see my slide correctly?
Yes, we can see your slide clearly. Not yet. Yes,
Okay.
It's perfect now. Yes.
Okay. Thank you to have me. Good morning, everyone. And it's my pleasure to have the opportunity to present my work here. And today, this paper is What Share of Patent is Commercialized. This paper is co-authored with Xu Boxuan in National Tsinghua University, Li Yongna and Zhang Walash in Georgia Tech. Okay. So I would like to talk about the topic that is very fundamental to discuss on the patent policies and first strategy and innovation economics. So the question is, what share of patents is commercialized? So as we know, the government agencies like USPTO, which is the patent office, they collect a lot of different types of patent-related statistics, like how many of patents are granted, how many of them are applied, and what is the patents class assignments, assignee and inventor's characteristics, and so much. So, however, the data set that miss one important statistics, which is how many of them are commercialized. So it's important to note that not all the uncommercialized patents are failures. Sometimes the firm were using those patents to the preemptive use. So what is preemptive use? You're just using them to block competitors or to secure your market position in the market by applying the patents. So the patents has a lot of different usage to, if we have the number, it's very important to help us guide on the patent policy. So this number can help us to discussing around the patent policies and help us to understand the strategy of firm and innovation economics. So let's talk about two very important examples why we need to have the number of shares of patent utilization. So the first one is whether the patents can keep the patent, whether the inventors can keep the patent rights of those government-funded patents. Or why, if we want to know whether the government-funded can help to the patent commercialization. So there is a very famous ad they call the Baidu ad in 1980s. So before the 1980, if your patent, if your invention are funded by governments, then you cannot, the government has the rights. So in other words, you don't have, it could not do anything about with it without government's permission. So, so the Senator Bai, he said, out of the 30,000 patents that government present holds, less than 4% are ever successfully licensed. So he promote this act. This act are funded by, and you can keep the right. Basically, you can do anything about it. You can make it to the product, you can sell the right to someone else, or pretty much everything you want to do it. The government can still step in if the government think the inventor isn't used properly, of the invention is really important for public health and safety, and but that does not happen so often. So if we have the number of what share of patents is commercialized, then we can provide a more clear idea on how and to set up the best patent policies for the government-funded inventors. So let's move to the another discussions why we need to have the share of patents. So this is called a patent thicket. It's many papers discussing this idea. So imagine you want to invent, you want to build a tree house per se, but the tree is so complicated that the branches intertwine to each other that you are hardly to build your tree house in the tree. This is something called a thicket. So the situation is when you want to invent, say, the smartphone. So the smartphone has many licenses in many aspects, like screen, the software, the battery, or the memory, for everything. They are patentized. So what is the problem? If you want to invent a smartphone, then you are worried you are accidentally using someone else's patent and getting sued. Or you may need to spend a lot of money and time to asking permission from all different patent owners. So if we know what is the share of patent is a preemptive use, which is they using to create a patent thicket, then we may get a better idea whether how competitive or how the market situation is going on here. So this is the major reason why we know what share of patents is utilized in different functions. So the very intuitive way is that we ask ChatGPT or we ask Google, we ask Bing, so what share of patent is commercialized? Then you can see he will tell you that about 5 to 7% or only 0.3% of the patents is commercialized. So we can see where the number comes from. The low commercializing rate, the only 5 to 10%, is came from WIPO or U.S. Senate Judiciary Report or the law school textbook. So those numbers are something like false statistics or very small scale of research. But if you go on to other research, they are survey based. So if you look at another strand of literature, you will see a high commercializing rate is about 50 to 60. So for example, my co-author's 2016 paper, they have the inventor survey. They ask the inventors whether your patent is commercialized or not. Then they found that 55% of the patent is commercialized. And other like European Patents Office, NSF, or a very older survey that all suggest the commercialization rate is quite high. So you can see they are very two different literatures about the patent commercialization rate, but there is no conclusive answers to large-scale studies. So what we want to do in these studies, we want to do using the machine learning and natural language processing techniques to measure what is the different types of patents, their usage probabilities at large scale. So basically, we're using our training data, then test our model into the whole patent database in the United States. So it's more than 4 million patents. So we do it at a very large scale. And we provide the new statistics that can solve or can provide some evidence to the discussion on the patent policy about the government fund patents and about how many of them are preemptive use. And our contribution is about the methodologies and on the machine learning based research on patents. Okay. So if you are familiar with the machine learning, our approach is supervised learning approach. So in a supervised learning approach is something like the logistic regression in our settings. So you need to have the Y labels. So for example, when you do the logistic regression, you need to 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. In our case, the 1 means the patent is commercialized. 0 means that the patent is not commercialized. So first, we identify our training samples from the survey data. So we're using our co-authors survey data. They put the survey on the inventors. The survey can help us identify which patent is commercialized or not. So in the survey, they ask the inventors whether your patent is in-house, which means that you make your patent invention into a product, process, service, or your patent is licensing to others, or your patent is using to the startup. So has the patent been exploited commercially by yourself or any of your co-inventors for starting a new company? So in this way, we gather the response from inventors. We can know which patent is commercialized or not. So in the machine learning, we get the Y labels 1 and 0. Of course, we have more than commercialized type. We have other type of non-use, like prospective, which means that the pattern is still exploring the commercial possibility, like the preemptive, which the pattern is used to blocking other firms or preventing inventing around, or the pattern is actually a failed pattern, a junk pattern that cannot commercialized anymore. So we have the label 1 for use, 0 for non-use, or we have the second question is 1 for preemptive, 0 for non-preemptive. So actually we have 4 binary classification question. So actually this is just a very simple logistic regression framework. So let's look at our training data. We have 1,492 patents. This is our training data. Among them, there are 95% of them, the inventor response is commercialized. So the non-commercialized use is, we have 15.68% of them are preemptive, 27% are prospective, and 23% are failed patent. So this is our training label. And this slide is just show that our training sample and the full sample, which is 4 million patents in 1981 to 2015, of all the patents, their distribution are very balanced. So we're just using the training sample, then train our machine learning models, and using the parameters predict the commercialization rate of those whole patent data set. Okay. So if you imagine you want to do the logistic regression, now we have Y, the 0, 0, 1, 0, 1. Now you need to construct your X, right? Your explanatory variable. So it's like the ordinary least square. You need to have a lot of X. And in the machine learning, we need to have a lot of the X. So we have 2 types of X. The first one is structured and keynote data. The other one is we're using the natural language deep learning approach to extract the information from the text data. So let's talk about the structured data first. This is what we familiar in the patent literature. The structured data we're using like the patents class, the number of assignees, number of citations. So what is the citation of patents? Because when you invent a patent, you may refer to the previous patents. So this is called the backward citations. You're using their knowledge. And the claims is the patents, the legal status. It can, when you have the patent infringement case, the lawyers and the judge were using the claims to determine whether other firm, excuse me. So we have 30 variables in the previous literatures that are very important to determine the patent usage. And the other type of a variable,
5 minutes.
yes. The other, okay, so the other type of X we use is the contextual embedding text data. We're using the model called the Google's BERT for patents. So for example, you have a documents, then you put into these deep learning models, then he will give you the numerical numbers. So these numerical numbers can represent your document's contextual knowledge. So we're using those vectors as the explanatory variable in our machine learning algorithm. So we're using the so-called random forest algorithm, and we're using the pre-standard algorithm. We're also using the XGBoost logistic OLS it turns out the random forest hat give us the best model estimation. So you can see if you have the bird, just the encoding from the natural language model, your accuracy, which is area under the curve, is highly about 60 to 70%. Compare if you don't using the bird, you have about 10% increase of your prediction accuracy. Okay, so using the machine learning can help us under the nonlinear relationship. We call this is a partial dependent plot. For example, the similarity of your pattern to your backward citation patterns, the more likely of your similar to the previous work, the less likely of your pattern to be commercialized. So this is not, the machine learning can help us under the nonlinear relationship between your X and your Y. And we also see that our predicted probability on the pattern commercialization rate is a very good predictors for whether the pattern is renewed or not renewed. So you can see the Y here is whether after 12 years the pattern is renewed. So if the pattern is the probability of commercializing is high, this pattern is more likely to be renewed. So this is our external validation to see that our model works to explain the variation of our pattern usage. So after we train our model, we apply our estimation to the whole patterns filed from 1981 to 2015. You can see the commercialization rate is 59%. The prospective rate is 30%. Preemptive rate is pretty low, is about 20%. Okay, so you can see the pattern commercialization rate through time is decreasing. However, the pattern preemptive rate is slightly higher, increasing from 1995 to 2010. And if we classify our patterns assignee by the small firm and large firm, you can see the large firm, so sorry, this is small firm, the solid line. The small firm has higher commercialization rate and lower preemptive rate for the pattern. And if we classify our patterns by the government interest, you can see the government funded. So the government interest, which means the pattern is funded by the governments. The pattern's commercialization rate through time is decreasing. So it seems that the Baidu Act helps to commercialize the government-funded inventions. So this is a variation by the government interest. So the conclusion, in this study, we provide new statistics about the pattern commercialization rate and non-commercialization rate. We find that 59% of the pattern is commercialized. And we also have the innovation on the methodology contributions. We're using the cell label training data. We're using the inventor survey as our Y. It's not the research identify the Y equals to 1 or 0. And we're using the BERT, which is a very, very powerful deep learning approach to help us to embedding the conceptual embeddings to help us understand the very complex context of the documents. And we also have the new validation methods. We're using the renewal, and I skipped that. This is called a virtual pattern marketing data. This is a very new data set. We're using those data to see that our approach can explain the variation of commercialization and preemptive of our models. So, okay, I hope I do it in a very concise way. Thank you. So, any questions?
So thank you so much, Dr. Nguyen Trinh Chan. Maybe we have the question at the end of the section. So
Sure.
thank you so much. Yes, so next, don't waste our time. So we would like to introduce Miss Trương Hoàng Diệp Hướng. She will have the second webinar with the topic, the effect of economic complexity and energy security on energy efficiency. So, dear Miss Hướng, can you please present?
Yes, thank you. Let me share my screen.
Yes.
Have you seen my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. So please help me to bigger. Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you. So good morning, colleagues. My name is Huang from Banking Academies, and I'm very pleased to be present in today's seminar to present the results of my research topics. So the paper I bring to the conversation today is the effects of economic complexity and the energy security on the measures of energy efficiencies. So first, let me talk about the reasons why we choose these topics. So you know that in recent years, the global warming and sustainable development are the issues that are perceiving attention of many countries. And in the recent decades, a number of global institutions, such as the International Energy Agencies, the United Nations, Environment Protection Agency, and the European Commission have been making a concerted effort to address the challenges of climate change and global warming. And the International Energy Agency in 2021 had noted that the importance of energy efficiencies is one of the major objectives towards a more sustainable energy transition. The previous study had explored aspects of energy demand with the goal of improving energy efficiencies. However, a growing literature has emerged considering the new determinant of energy demand to include the energy security risks and the economic complexity. And that is one of the and that is my paper is focused about specifically. This study examines the extent to which the economic complexity and the energy security risk can improve energy efficiencies, proceed by the energy intensity and carbon intensity across a panel of the top 25 energy use countries over the period 1990 to 2015. So the contributions of our study is I think that the first contribution is it is the first time the rule of economic complexity and the energy security risk on energy intensity and carbon intensity is explored. And also, we use a multivariate panel framework for our analysis, and the use of the new measure of energy efficiency represented by the energy intensity and the carbon intensity. And also, to achieve the desired policy objective, we utilize a panel quantile regression approach instead of the conditional mean approach to estimate the long-run elasticity and relationship among the variables in the questions. So previous study often deal with the heterogeneity among countries by just simplifying examining the subsample. Instead, the quantile regression approach proposed by Powell in 2022 is capable of dealing efficiently with heterogeneity by allowing different quantiles to have a differential impact and at the same time avoiding the splitting of the sample. In other words, the empirical outcome will investigate the impact of driver of energy efficiency across the conditional distributions. And this is the methodological contribution of our study in the advanced literature. So let's move in the literature reviews. The relationship between energy demand economic growth, urbanization, renewable energy, and the trades across different countries have explored in the extant literature. However, that a few studies have considered newly emerging indices like the economic complexity and the energy security risk, a major driver of energy efficiency, particularly across the high income and the middle income country. So we examine the literature in all three major dimensions. The first is the economic complexity index and the energy efficiency measures. The second is the energy security risk and the energy efficiency measures. And the final is the efficiency performance across the countries. So let's move to the first literature review. And you may be familiar with a very famous environmental theory, which means that's the Q-net curve theory. The Q-net curve describes that the relationship between the growth and the environment has the yield curve, inverted yield curve. At the first phase, the economic growth will lead to an increase in the carbon emissions and decrease in the environmental quality. But when the economic moves to another phase, then the development of the economic will actually will enhance the quality of the environment in the economy. However, subsequently, very new idea about the economic complexity had emerged, and the question about the traditional economic growth approach of understanding a country progression, and they introduced a new concept of economic complexity. So the economic sophistication or economic complexity is the amount of the knowledge that is utilized by the country to build up its production structure. And the country with higher economic complexity will have higher degree of production specialization and structural transformation. So I think that is a better proxy for the development of the country. And when examining this index with the quality, we can bring a more insightful knowledge about the linking between the development and the environmental issues. So based on this, we form our first hypothesis, which state that the economic complexity will significantly impact the energy intensity and carbon intensity of the top 25 energy use countries. For the second literature reviews, which is about the energy security and the energy efficiency measures. So the energy security risk is a multi-dimensional concept which covers a wide range of energy-related areas, such as the availability and the affordability of energy source, the environmental impact of the energy uses, and the applicability of energy technology. However, there is also a limited study based on the quantile indicator of energy security risk across the country. And the discussion reveals that energy security risk will reduce the demand for the energy and promote economic development through the improvement in the energy efficiencies. From that, we form our hypothesis 2, which is the energy security risk will significantly impact the energy intensity and carbon intensity of the top 25 energy use countries. And for the last hypothesis, given that the production reallocation has taken place in recent years towards the middle-income country, we expect that the differential performance between the developed and the developing country. It is vital to consider the major driver of the measure of energy efficiency. namely the energy intensity and carbon intensity across countries with different income level and varying dimensions of development for the two major reasons. The first, the developed countries are currently moving in the direction of sustainable energy use and improving the environmental quality, while the developing countries are still struggling to combat the emission level and reduce their dependence on the fossil fuel. And the second, the manufacturing and industrial projects in the current decades have witnessed specific locational transitions, mostly in the developing world, which has increased the energy intensity of production in this country, particularly the case of China and India. So based on this, we form our first hypothesis, which is there are variations in the impact of the major determinants like economic complexity and energy security risks on energy efficiency as a measure of energy intensity and carbon intensity for high income and the middle income countries. So let's move to the methodology part. So to check the hypothesis H1 and H2 of the study, we form an equation that is described in the screen. And for the variable use, we have some of the dependent variable, which is energy intensity and carbon intensity. And for the controlling effect of other impact on the environment, we also include in our equation some several and famous variables that have been used in the literature, such as the urbanization rate, the renewable energy, the trade openness, and the GDP per capita. And we start by conducting cross-sectional dependency, stationary, co-integration, and normality distribution, just to ensure that our methodology choice is appropriate. And after the primary checks, we using quantile regressions model to estimate our equation. So the main reason for adopting the partial quantile regression approach depends in large part on the data itself. If the residuals from the regression are not normally distributed, the conditional mean regression will produce unreliable results. As such, it's more relevant to allow the flexibility in the slope for different quantile of the dependent variable. And by taking into consideration the heterogeneous distribution of the panel data, the problem of over and underestimation based on traditional mean regression approach is avoided if we use the quantile regressions. So based on this methodology, we run the regressions on the data of the 25 country which use most energy in the world, and the result is described in the screen. So we first import the regression result in table S is for full sample size, and the panel A is about the determinant of energy intensity, and we have a panel B with the determining of the carbon intensity. And for the first thing, we should know that an improvement in economic complexity will enhance the energy efficiency as defined by lowering the energy intensities. So this finding is consistent with the conclusions of other researches and confirm our expectation about the beneficial role of economic complexity in controlling the environmental issues. And the majority of the country in our group have advanced to become industrialized economy, in which the composition and technological effect of the economic development will outweigh the scale effects, and an economic structure that's prioritized by less energy consuming sector will advantage for energy efficiency. Besides that, we observe that the influence of economic complexity, as you can see, is stronger in less energy efficient country, and the size of the core efficiency increase with the distribution of energy intensity. You see that in the 10, the size is small, whereas in the 19, the size is larger. So this finding may imply that the evolution of the economic structure of sophisticated knowledge support the positive impact of the two factor, technological and productions input mix, over the harmful impact of the industrial structure and scale. However, the amplitude of economic complexity decrease gradually in the process of reducing energy intensity. And for the energy security risks, we found that the energy security risk is positively related to energy intensity. So the results verify other work regarding to the importance of controlling for the energy security to enhance the energy efficiencies. And in particular, our findings are consistent with the risk compensation theory or the detrimental influence of uncertainty on investment in technology innovation from both behavioral and financial perspective. Great. So although that for this the determinant of carbon intensity are concerned, as we can see that although the economic complexity has a negative and significant had a negative and significant impact on carbon intensity. The influence vary widely, and not like the first situation, it does not follow a steady trend like the energy intensity across the distribution of carbon intensity. So maybe the explanation is because we include both of the developed and the developing country group in model. This depending on the whether the technology, the scale, the structural effect offsets each other. The total impact of the economic complexity index on the environment can be either the positive or negative. So if we bring all of the sample in the one equation, it can, make the result more complicated. And with regard to the rule of the energy security risk, its influence on carbon intensity is harmful or beneficial depending on the level of carbon intensity. You see that the side of the coefficient trends from negative to positive and then back to the negative one. And as from the beginning, I have thought that in this paper, we also want to see if we split the sample into the high income and the middle income country, whether or not the result is different. And it is. There are some major difference when we talk about the high income country and we talk about the middle income country. For example, although the effect of economic complexity on energy intensity is still negative and statistical significant, a small quantity in the high-income country, but the size of the effect is lower than all of the country, which means that in the high-income country, a diminishing marginal effect happen, and the high-income country will require more effort to achieve energy efficiencies. And for the middle-income country, we think we also assess the influence of the economic complexity and energy security risks are shown to be distant from those in the high-income country. For example, in the middle-income country, the damaging impact of the energy security risk intensity with the impact increasing with the level of energy intensity. And that is we go to the conclusion remark and policy implication. So after the regression, we find some of the major results. First, this an improvement in the economic complexity will enhance the energy efficiency for the full sample of the country. The energy risk is positively associated with the energy intensity for the full sample as well. The positive impact of economic stability in the middle-income country is of a lesser degree when compared to the high-income country, and the use of renewable, the trade openness will contribute to lowering both energy intensity and carbon intensity in the middle-income country. But the low level of economic stability and the technology sophistication will have a high energy security risk contribute to the energy intensity. And then come to some policy implication. I think that is all of my presentation, and thank you for your listening, and I hope that I will have some comments and questions to improve my paper. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Ms. Hương, for your very good presentation. So the two topics of the two papers today is very interesting. The first is about the share of patents in commercial life. What is it and how to measure that? And the second is about the effect of economic complexity and energy security on how can we get the energy efficiency. So now we go straight to the Q&A section. Do not waiting for that. We have a lot of questions in the chat box now. So I would like to clarify for all the audience today. So allow me to repeat the question from Professor Richard first. So now we will go to the first topic. What share of the patent is commercialized? If you have any question, please just speak and ask by yourself. But now I will start with Professor Richard's question first. So, Professor had three questions. The number one is the trending data of the around 1,400 patents are publicly available already. And the questions two to transform the text to numeric factor. Do you trust the symbol word count? And the question three, if a patent can be commercialized over time, is their value will decrease over time? So please, Dr. Hu Chun Zhang, can you help me to answer the question?
Sure. I think I have already answered in the chat box, but I can tell you that the first one is because our label data, which is our training data, this is conducted by the US inventor survey by my co-authors. So it's not a public available data. And let me see. Oh, I mentioned I'm using the explanatory variable X from the context of the patents documents. I'm using the Google Patent BERT data, BERT. It's a bidirectional encoder, whatever data is a deep learning based approach. So it's not a patent, you count the numbers in the patent text or TF IDF approach. I just using the deep learning approach. Okay. So the third one is because we haven't done the comparison between the patent value and our predicted probability of commercialization. So I don't know the answer of that. Maybe after we assess afterward, maybe the next paper will pursue this issue. Thank you, Richard, for your questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Hunt. So is there any other guest have any question for Dr. Hui Jin Chan?
So let me just ask my question. So I know the CO2 emissions, the data has lots of missing data. So I just wondering what is your data source and how to you deal with those missings in your empirical study.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Dr. Hui Jin Chan. So if any other guests have any question for Dr. Hui Jin Chan, please give your hand. So I will try to back to the second papers. Okay. So we also have some question for Ms. Hương.
Yes. So I have read the question in the meeting chat. The first question is about the CAO-FX data and lots of missing data. So in this paper, we only use 25 countries in our samples, and we is reducing the missing of the CO2 and missing data. And also about that, because we use linear quantile regressions, which is not allowed for the missing data in our regression model. So we just access the country which is not have enough data for analysis. So is this for the first question. And for the second question, the GDP is negatively significant, and can you prove any explanations? The relationship between GDP and environmental quality is very complicated. The famous literature about this, as I has talked, is the QNet curve, which describes the relationship is inverted U-shape. However, it's also very famous one which is expand the literature and say that it's not like the U curve, it's more like the sin. And it's that in the first phase of the GDP growth, the country moved from the agriculture to the industrial, and then in this phase, in this way, the GDP will reduce the environmental qualities. So the sign is positive. In the next phase, when the economy moves from the the industry to post-industry, which is more services, then it's reduced the carbon emission. Then the sign is turned from positive to negative. And in the more subsequent phase, when the economic expand, it's like it's making the income of the household is increased, and then the production scale is also increased, and this process is making the GDP, the coefficient between the GDP and the CO2 is turning to the negative again. So to the positive again. So it's like the positive, negative, and positive. Yeah, it's like this curve. And because our sample is have both the product, income, middle income country and high income country, then it make the result more complicated in that way. Thank you. And that is the question.
Thank you so much for Ms. Hương. So we on the way have some question from Dr. Hui Jin Chan. So hello, doctor. Can you speak directly to the speaker also? So I would like to welcome all the other question from our guests. So we have the question 3, just suggestion. So, Professor, can you help me suggest to?
Okay. So I think because this paper using the panel quantile regression model is I think is a highlight for your paper rather than using the usual panel regression model. So the most important things is you need to show why you need to use in the panel you need to use in the quantile regression. So the most is you can show that your x-axis is quantile, your y is your parameter estimates, and to show why you have different effects of the same x to different quantile of your y, which is your CO2 emission. So if you can tell a very good story about why different quantile, about why the effects varying within different quantiles, then this can be very good to readers to understand why you need to using this report. Otherwise, why we need to use that. I know that you have tables, but I think the the plots in the presentation or in your paper will be a plus for your research. Yeah, this is just a suggestion.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. Actually, in my paper, there are plot, but I did not put it on the presentations. So the reasons why we're choosing the quantile regression model is based on the data. And because the error term is not follow the normal distributions, and if we follow the usual mean approach like the ordinary least square, this may result in bias or estimations, and that's why we choose the quantile regression model. But I take the advance, and for the next time, I will pay more attention on the methodology part to read or to understand more about the reasons why I choose this. Thank
No,
you.
I think the reason you choose is not only because your y is not normal distributed. The reason you're choosing quantile regression should be that for example, your policy, your x, the policy uncertainty for those high emission firms maybe has greater impact, and the same x for those low emission firms has maybe lower impact. So for different quantiles of your y, you need to show they have different effects from your x. That's why you need to use in the quantile regression. So maybe you need to put more emphasis on your methodology choice. Otherwise, the reviewer may think it's not necessary to using such complex methodology. I think the methodology is good. You just need to think more and explain more why you need to use. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. I will have give your advice and improve my paper. Thank you a lot.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chuan and Ms. Hu. Very good discussion. So I would like to ask, do any other guests we have any question for the two topics today? So if you have any questions, I think the webinar today is very successful with the two topics. It's very interesting. What the share of the patent is commercialized and the effect of economic complexity and energy security on the energy efficiency. So I would like to say the big thanks to Dr. Huynh Trinh Tran, spend time for us to share your topics, and Ms. Trương Hoàng Diệp Hương, the PhD candidate. We hope that you will get the degree as soon as very soon. So thank you so much for all of our guests participating in the webinar today, and we hope that you will continue to participate in the series of us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, and have a good morning. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.